As the beauty of snowdrops and crocuses gives way to the beauty of daffodils and tulips, as increasing birdsong graces our mornings with delight, as increasing warmth and light inspire us, warm us. May our gathering for worship inspire us with more beauty, more light, more warmth in this world of joy and sorrow intertwined. As we join together in worship once again in this place made sacred by generations, centuries of love on this land sacred to the peoples of the Massachusetts, Wampanoag, and other First Nations. We have gathered once again, and it is good. Chalice lighting words offered this morning by Dennis Hogan. Dennis.
I light the chalice this morning in gratitude for this church's long-standing commitment to nourishing the spirit and to supporting all in the free and open search for meaning.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you very much. Then we lift our voices in song. Number 1017 in your teal-covered, soft-covered hymn book, Building a New Way. Number 1017.
Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome to everyone here in the meeting house. Welcome to those who are wherever you are. It's good to have you with us too. Wherever we are, we have gathered. And welcome to old timers and to newcomers as well. If there are any newcomers or visitors this morning, I would invite you to stand and introduce yourself. If you are, I'm not sure if we do have. But it's good to see you all, some old friends, especially Dylan and Martha over there. Good to have you here. Welcome once again. If you are new, perhaps on Zoom, this morning we do look forward to getting to know you. I'm looking at you, Zoom people. If there's someone new, please explore our website. We look forward to getting to know you as we hope you will get to know us. Welcome to everyone. After the service, everyone is invited to a time of fellowship and conversation. Here in the meeting house, you can gather outside. It's a pretty nice day so far anyway. Hopefully it will still be. Also in our fellowship hall across the street will be open for gathering and conversation. And the Zoom link will remain open afterwards as well for conversation in that way. And finally, a reminder that every week we do accept and welcome donations to our food pantry. You can bring them and leave them in the vestibule under the table, and they will be brought to the Hingham Food Pantry to feed that need, in the words of the hymn, to feed that need. Time for all ages. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. There have been many deep losses in the course of the pandemic. There have been many other sorts of losses too, which are deep in another way. We know nothing can replace a human being, and the grief goes on forever. But there have been other losses, and one of those losses in the midst of the pandemic was being able to sing together. Because, as we know, singing is one way of transmitting quite efficiently the virus. That's a recoverable loss, unlike many others. It's a recoverable loss. We are in the process of recovering it, singing, even with masks, feeling comfortable and safe, singing once again. It's a beautiful thing to sing together. One of life's great pleasures, but it's more than that, turns out. Christopher kindly sent me a link this week to a study. There's science here, friends. A study that says that singing in a chorus or singing together, they've measured this. Our heart rates begin to synchronize. Not just to the beat, but to one another. I just love that. I mean, they've high school choruses, there was a study in Sweden. They've, whatever instruments they have to put on people. Our heart rates begin to synchronize. Our hearts synchronize. I got into the rabbit hole on the web, as we do. And of course, there are other studies, other sorts of studies about the power of singing together. And how, of course, we know this. It strengthens social bonds. So whether you're in kindergarten singing with your class and your teacher, or whether you're whatever age singing, you feel whatever's going on in the world, whatever's different about you and other people, your bonds with one another are strengthened. There used to be, I hope there will be again, maybe there is, I don't know. There was a congressional chorus. And people would, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they would all, at a certain time in the day or week, they would gather together and sing. That's such a beautiful thing. They were synchronizing their hearts, and they were strengthening their social bonds. I hope they'll do that again. We're going to have our disagreements, of course. They don't always have to be as contentious as they too often are now. We should sing together more often. We know, of course, that singing has been essential to all of so many of the social movements, certainly notably in the civil rights movement, marching and singing, strengthen the bonds to synchronize hearts, it turns out. I went to a climate change rally quite a number of years ago down in Washington, D.C. It was not helpfully really, really cold. So much for global warming that day. But there was a rally and lots of speakers. There was no singing. It was really too bad. We need to sing to synchronize our hearts and to strengthen our bonds together, don't we? So, one more time with feeling. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the woods so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you complicated. Thank you for singing together. Joys and sorrows, we have them in our lives. I will light candles for the ones that we name. And if you're on Zoom, please feel free, as we do, to enter it in chat, and Dave Lee will share it momentarily. I will light the first candle this morning, as we have been doing and will do, for the people of Ukraine and for all those suffering in the midst of war, whether in Ukraine or in Russia, those suffering the loss of their dear ones, and those lost. A candle for Ukraine and for peace. I'll light the second candle. This comes from Paul Kelly, for full recovery for Susan Damasco, who's currently in South Shore Hospital but will be home today. We wish Susan well and full recovery indeed, Paul. Abby Diamond Kissaday, the third candle, will be on her behalf to recognize the annual International Day of Transgender Visibility this Thursday, March 31st. Today, to raise awareness about transgender people, to celebrate the lives and contributions of transgender people, while also drawing attention to too often the poverty, the discrimination, and too often violence against that community. Those will be our first three candles this morning. Any joys or sorrows that need to be spoken, that you are moved to speak here in the meeting house? Yes, Eileen.
I'll try to keep it simple. It's basically joy for my niece, Casey, who I've talked about before, who went through serious chemotherapy and surgery for ovarian cancer in her 30s. Have a baby with her husband. She and her husband are now going to be caring, thanks to the loving generosity of a sister-in-law of Casey, her husband's brother's wife, who is carrying her child, and the baby is due within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, man.
Sadly, Casey is back in chemo, which is not his return, but she has such joy.
Oh, thank you, Eileen. This for your niece, Casey, and all the family who has been living with and being treated for ovarian cancer, which has returned. But the joy, it's a candle of joy that she and her husband will be, thanks to the generosity of her sister, is it? Her sister-in-law, who will be carrying her and her husband's child, who will be born within the next 2 weeks. Congratulations to all. Thank you. Yes, Diane Elliott. You can't hear me? Oh, I'll talk a little more into the mic. Thank you. A candle in remembrance of Anita Franks, who memorably used to shout out, "Can't hear you!" Okay, here we are. Thank you. Yes, Maureen. There we go. Right, Candle of Joy for the joy of the concert attended a few days ago, and for Julie Hong having given you the tickets, our old friend Julie Hong now in college, and the joy of singing together in that concert, at that concert. Thank you, Maureen. Michael.
Yeah, I'd just like to light a candle for our dear friend and our soloist for many years, Christopher, who lost his brother Frank this morning. So,
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. A candle for our tenor soloist, Chris Marr, whose brother died this morning. Chris is not with us, of course, this morning. And a candle burns, excuse me, for Chris and all of his family. Thank you, Michael. Yes, Mary Lou. Yeah. Oh, of course, Mary Lou, a candle for your granddaughter, Jessica, who grew up in this church. We remember so well, some of us, when she was a baby, who is all right, but was broadsided in her car. Somebody. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Well, we hold Jessica in our thoughts. Yeah. No. Good. No, that's hard. We will keep her in our prayers and thoughts. That shakes one. Thanks, Mary Lou. Eveline, is there anyone on chat?
Yes, we have several in the chat. First of all, from Paul Stone, a candle please to honor and celebrate the life of Deja Vu Stone, the beloved pet and companion to Paul and Amy. Deja Vu passed from this life last Wednesday. Secondly, a candle of joy from Lorraine Riggs that the tower on Allerton Hill here in Hull has a new lighted peace sign, and it is so heartwarming to witness. And a candle from Gary for those 300 persons who died in Mariupol theater in Ukraine. And finally, from Ethel Fraga, a prayer of gratitude for love and family. That's it in the chat.
Thank you, Eveline. These candles burn for all of those concerns, joys, sorrows, as they do for all joys, concerns, or sorrows that are in our hearts this day, though they've remained unspoken. I think we have at least one youth. We will sing her out if you're leaving. Even if you're not, we'll sing. And your adult companions, go now in peace. Go now in peace. Let the Spirit of love surround you everywhere you may go. May we settle mind, body, and spirit. Settle as much as we can after that bracing anthem. Settle mind and body and spirit during a time of prayer, meditation, silence, seeking peace that we might better create peace in our lives, in the world. Breathing into peace. As we pray prayers of peace, as we do every week, every day, for the people of Ukraine, for the people in all too many war zones on our planet today. And as we hold in our hearts as well all those who have not enough to eat, hold refugees in our hearts, refugees from war and oppression. Hold all who are without a home in our hearts. For though our hands are but two, our hearts are infinite in their reach, with sympathy, with love. In this spirit, may the prayers of our hearts become the work of our hands in whatever modest ways we can contribute to the shared work of bringing more love, more justice, more peace to the lives of those around us and to the world we share. Beginning close to home as we hold in our hearts those who have expressed a sorrow or a concern this morning, so that no one among us feels alone in their sorrow and need, just as no one, wherever they are, should feel alone. May we continue our meditations and prayers in contemplative, and may it be renewing, silence. Our second reading is going to be shared. Corey Fitzmarcus and I will share this reading. This first reading, which consists of versions of the Golden Rule, you all know that one, but versions from a variety of the world's religions. First, from the Baha'i faith. Lay not on any soul a load that you would not wish to be laid upon you, and desire not for anyone the things that you would not desire for yourself.
From Buddhism, treat not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. From Christianity, in everything do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets.
From Confucianism, one word which sums up the basis of all good conduct, loving kindness. Do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. From Hinduism, this is the sum of duty. Do not do to others what would cause pain if done to you.
From Islam, not one of you truly believes until you wish for others what you wish for yourself. From Jainism, one should treat all creatures in the world as one would like to be treated.
From Judaism, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. This is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. And from Sikhism, I am a stranger to no one, and no one is a stranger to me. Indeed, I am a friend to all.
From Taoism, regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. From Zoroastrian, do not do unto others whatever is injurious to yourself.
And here ends the reading. Thank you, Corey. Our morning offering, as you all well know, is invited in two different ways. Those here in the meeting house are welcome to use the baskets at either exit as you leave for your offering. And everyone is invited as well, wherever you are, to at home or on your computer to find the donate link on our oldshipchurch.org website. And you may donate to our Sunday plate offering to support all the ministries of our congregation. You may also donate to our monthly outreach offering, which this month will be given to our youth group to support their service and learning trip this spring. Whatever the way in which you donate, however much we are able each to give, this is another way of deepening our bonds and reaching out to serve in the wider world. Thank you in advance for your generosity. Our offertory, since Chris Marr is, sadly for him and his family, as you've heard, Chris is not with us to sing the solo for change. Instead, our anthem is, I Dream of a Church. I dream of a church.
I dream of a place beyond.
Our second reading this morning will be shared by one of our choir members, Michael Jordan, who is making his way to the microphone as I speak. Michael, thanks so much.
Our second reading this morning is consensus decision-making from the Haverford College website. Consensus is a voteless decision-making process that emphasizes inclusiveness, openness to new insights, and broad ownership in decisions. Consensus implies that people are carefully listened to, since each person is necessary and responsible for the growth and learning of all. That requires everybody to be open to the possibility of modifying his or her position. There is an active effort to incorporate minority views in the final decision. For consensus to work, people need to give up the tendency to form factions or seek influence. Instead, the community needs to be willing to struggle together for creative agreement. Here ends the reading.
Thank you, Michael. We're going to sing again. Be invited to sing anyway. Our hymn is number 161 in your gray hymn books. 161, Peace, the Perfect Word. 161. Seated. Perhaps you, like me, have found yourself often feeling sad these days, an underlying feeling tone, if you will, whatever else might be going on in our lives, for good or ill. The sentence from the writing of the 20th century psychologist Erich Fromm that we placed at the top of today's order of service names, it seems to me, at least one reason for this sadness. He wrote, "One cannot be deeply responsive to the world without being saddened very often." One cannot be deeply responsive to the world without being saddened very often. How, after all, can we not be sad as we witness on our screens or news feeds or papers the destruction and human suffering in Ukraine? The only way is not to be sad or maybe angry too, and lots of other emotions, is to deny and ignore, to shut ourselves off from knowing or seeing and focusing only on what's in our immediate purview. In other words, the only way to not be deeply responsive or sympathetic, to use another word. As I say those words, responsive, sympathetic, they sound inadequate, even hollow, pale in the face of the cruelty and suffering we're witnessing every day. But we do respond. We are sympathetic. And of course, we send as much as we can, if we can, to help with humanitarian efforts, even though it never feels like enough. How could it? And we pray, if prayer is part of our spiritual life, for all those who are suffering. But neither a check nor a prayer means that we can now just go on with our peaceful, around here, privileged lives as if nothing else was going on. We've dealt with this now, and now can avoid our sadness. Of course not. And further, I'm also aware, as you are, that the suffering in the war in Ukraine is not the only suffering in the midst of war on the planet. Think of Ethiopia, think of Yemen and other places, or post-war Afghanistan, not to mention suffering in the midst of various oppressions, and not to mention just the ordinary, quote-unquote, suffering that comes with being human. Plenty of reasons to be saddened very often. Sorry to bring them to you this morning, but you all know them. Why is it that we respond, viscerally respond to suffering half a planet away? I think it has to do with the truth that John Donne, 4 centuries ago or so, articulated in familiar lines. No man is an island entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thine own or of thine friends were. Each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind. Therefore send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. John Donne wrote all those centuries ago, before these beams were even raised. Simple, really, isn't it? Contrary to the base and extreme individualism of our culture, contrary to the reductionist idea that human beings are at root selfish, that even the nice things we do, even the good things we do, is just so we can feel better about ourselves. I mean, it does feel good to do good, right? So isn't that selfish? But contrary to all such ideas, we are, in fact, each of us, a piece of the continent, a part of the main, which is why we respond, why we help. It's more than an abstraction, not just a pleasant idea that might be used as a salve for existential loneliness. Not at all. It's a truth. It's the truth of who we are as human beings. I preach it almost every Sunday, as you know. Last Sunday, and probably next Sunday too, one way or another, I preach it. And as you've heard on innumerable Sundays, it's an ancient truth, far more ancient than the 4 centuries since John Donne. Paul articulated it as naming that we are each one of us, part of one body of Christ. Buddhism gave us the wonderful metaphor of the jewel net of Indra. Each of us a node on the net, reflecting all the others, part of the one net. What a beautiful metaphor that is. And indigenous peoples of this land and around the world, but certainly here, naming that we are all siblings, and not just of one another, but of all beings, every creature, and so on. The various iterations of the Golden Rule that we heard earlier, they're just grounded in the same reality that we are all inextricably linked, related to one another in this intimately interwoven fabric of life. And further, it turns out that these metaphors, if you will, are being reflected, reinforced, affirmed in contemporary science, neuroscience, ecology, and so on. So all this said, of course we feel sadness in response to suffering half a planet away or wherever it might be, and for whatever reason, suffering of any person, indeed any creature. Paul Stone, in his candle this morning. We offer sympathy for Paul and Amy at the loss of their dear canine companion, Deja Vu. Yet, importantly, it is also true that because of our deep interconnectedness with one another, we just as naturally feel upwelling joy in response to the joy of others. It happens here every Sunday when somebody names a joy, a new child expected, whatever it might be, a graduation. Someone shares joy that elicits joy in us. We respond to the smile of a child, that child that President Biden held up, a refugee from Ukraine and Poland, and her smile elicits our smile. We respond to joy as well. With all this in mind, I'm reminded of another poem, this one contemporary, by the Irish poet Michael Cody. I think we've shared this before. He said, "Though there are torturers in the world, there are also musicians. Though at this moment men are screaming in prisons, there are jazz men raising storms of sensuous celebration, and orchestras releasing glories of the Spirit. Though the image of God is everywhere defiled, a man in West Clare is playing the concertina. The Sistine Choir is levitating under the dome of St. Peter's, and a drunk man on the road is singing for no reason." For just as joy and sorrow are interwoven in our personal lives, they are interwoven in this fabric of life. And when it comes to music, one of the threads this morning in Michael Cody's poem, just the other day, some of you may have seen this, the Ukrainian cellist, I apologize for pronunciation, Denis Karachevstev, played so beautifully Bach's Cello Suite No. 5 amidst the ruins of Kharkiv, his home city. How can one not feel sad and joyful watching this video, hearing the music in the shadow of bombed out apartment buildings? Seems to me we need to amend, don't we, Erich Fromm's statement, something like this: one cannot be deeply responsive to the world without being saddened very often, or without often feeling joy. Well, all this is a long introduction to my topic this morning. But more than an introduction, as I hope you'll see, the topic, can't we all get along? It is more than an introduction, for I would affirm that everything I've said thus far, reminding us of the underlying reality of who we are, utterly interrelated, part of, as I put it last week, the unfolding creative evolution of universe. All of this is what makes getting along even feasible to begin with. Now, there are, quite needless to say, countervailing forces at work. So the reality of who we are is simple. In one way of looking at things, we are indeed part and parcel of one another, one fabric of life. But it's a complex fabric. And when it comes to humans, we know that though we are often kind and generous to one another, getting along, more often than not, I would affirm, another part of who we are is indeed also prone to the illusion of separateness, which too often leads to delusions of greed, selfishness, and cruelty. I don't claim to know why this is so, this duality of who we are, but it is. Which is why getting along doesn't always just happen, isn't always easy. Maybe it wouldn't be such a delight if it were easy. We take delight when, oh, this is so nice. We're getting along. We're managing. We're doing things together. Now, as you may have read in the newsletter, today's topic evolved from my conversations with Michael Jordan. Michael was the high bidder of a sermon at the auction at Merry Market, and he suggested this general theme. Michael happens to be a fellow Haverford College graduate. You heard him read from the website. He came a little after I did. My 50th reunion will be next year. But though we were at Haverford at very different times, there are threads connecting our times. One common thread was Haverford's commitment as a Quaker-founded college to the Quaker process of consensus when it comes to decision making. Getting along, in other words, in the midst of decision making about issues, whether easy or hard. In the second reading, we heard a description from the Haverford website of this consensus process, which began a voteless decision-making process that emphasizes inclusiveness, openness to new insights, and broad ownership in decisions. The statement went on to affirm that it's a process that requires all voices to be listened to with care, and it requires each person to be willing to change. As the statement concluded, quote, the community needs to be willing to struggle together for creative agreement, which in fact the Haverford College student body as a whole does every year to ratify once again the student honor code. Every year, gather in plenary, every student, well, not too many years before I was there, you were required to go to plenary sessions, but there were only 400 of us then. But there are plenary sessions most of the student body attends every year to debate any changes, or even if not change, to ratify the honor code. I remember sometimes lively, even contentious plenary meetings, as I'm sure, I expect Michael does, as our daughter Sandra, another Haverford graduate, no doubt does as well. In these big, sometimes long conversations about something that matters a great deal, how to get along with one another in community. It's not just an academic honor code, it's about how to be with each other in community. What could be more important than that in a community? And keeping in mind all along the way, whether at Haverford or wherever, that consensus is based on the idea that in conversation, creative agreement, something new might emerge to which everyone can assent, or at least learn to live with, can be discovered. Agreement that might transcend whatever initial positions people held. It's what we do here at Old Ship in some measure, though we use Robert's rules, we don't name it consensus, but we strive, whether at a board meeting or at our annual meetings or any special parish meeting, to have enough conversation about whatever is before us to perhaps come closer to something we could call consensus. Closer than would have been the case, if we had just gone right to a vote without talking. So, all this about the possibility of reaching consensus on whatever it might be is indeed rooted in this assumption that I spoke about of who we are. It's more than an assumption, really, isn't it? One fabric of life. So that if we talk long enough, we will get in sync, hearts beating, if not as one, then certainly in more harmony, closer to harmony. Slowly get along a little more. I know, in light of everything from the war in Ukraine to the hearings in Congress to confirm the eminently qualified Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court, in light of these realities and much else, all this might seem naive, even foolish. But I really do believe that we can learn to get along better than we sometimes do. In fact, I would affirm that we get along on the planet more often than we don't. When you think of everything that gets done, think of small kindnesses in the store, think of all the delivery systems around the planet, everything that gets done without much argument. We know how to get along, and we do. Now, I've lost a final reading that I had, like 2 sentences. Where did it go? I'll just have to remember it. This is from a book on the art of gathering. Yeah, it's disappeared. And the writer of the book said that she begins every gathering by asking people to imagine that together they are weaving a web, like a spider web. Now that's beautiful, but I would amend that also to say that I think it'd be better to begin a gathering saying, you are already a web. You are already woven together. What we're going to do now is to weave yet more intimately and deeply as we work together to strengthen that web. And if more of us, it seems to me, on the planet remember that we are already a web, part of a web, leading more of us to speak and listen accordingly in the midst of our lives of joy and sorrow woven fine, a world filled with both suffering and joy, as we know well, we just might get along a little bit better, remembering that we are a web and can make it stronger. Maybe we could find something approaching consensus about something even other than a war against a common enemy, maybe instead consensus for the flourishing of all life on our sacred earth home. And that would be good and worth working on together. Amen. Blessed be, and so may it be. Flames are separate on individual candles, but they are part of one circle, just as we are. I extinguish the flames lit with love. I cannot extinguish the love. I extinguish the flame of the chalice of our faith. I cannot extinguish the faith. May we carry it with us. Let's sing one more time, one more step. It's number 168 in our gray hymn books. 168. Be words and songs of peace as we, knowing the blessings of our lives, make of our lives a blessing to all life. Blessed be, and amen.